Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 6 of our series, where we're going to be covering our Kodomo-no-Hi project. Once again, we're back in our Yakuimo shop, and today we're going to be focusing primarily on this Koinobori flag and the pinwheel and the fixture on the side of the shop. So, what topics are we going to cover? We are actually going to be focusing on this area, and we're using the box cylinders. And for the fish, we'll be using a sphere, a mirror tool with some more spheres. And let's see here, for our pinwheel, we'll have a centered sphere, and then we might use this tube tool to get the actual, what do we call this, pedals? Or I don't even know what you call that, coming off the pinwheel. Maybe somebody can write in the comments what they think that those things are called. Wings? I don't even know. Okay. All right, so starting this video off great. Anyway, here's what we'll do. Let's go ahead and save where we're at. So we'll hit save. And what we need to do is we need to go back in time and get rid of all this stuff that we've worked so very hard on. All right, so we're going to be concentrating on this whole flag piece. And if we hit solo, this is essentially what we're working with. So we're going to have that base coming off the shaft that makes up what connects to the pinwheel. We'll have a couple circular shapes. This one, we're going to do some special masking to give it kind of a little bit extra shape and interesting character to it. Then we'll work on the array of pinwheel items going around the pinwheel. Wings, I don't know which what we'll call it, and then fish, tail, and then we're gonna do some of the simple design stuff just because I want to keep this video short, and at the very end of the project is when we're going to start adding in all the patterns. In our example image, you can see that we have the fish scales and some of that the tail tail has some streaks in it that have some color, and we can add that in there. We've done pretty good at replicating what the example image has for us. Again, we don't have to nail this perfectly, but we're just going to try and get close. Okay, so with all that covered, let's go ahead and select this, and we're going to hit delete. Now, let's go ahead, show everything for now, because we need something to anchor our Koinobori flag to. Okay, so we're going to add a box, and what we need to do is we need to make sure that that box is not stuffed in something that we don't need. So we'll snatch it out of the door. For some reason it tried to stick it in there. We'll click add. We're going to add a group, and we're going to call this group. Now, we're not going to use the Japanese name just because we're going to keep things simple and moving quickly. We're just going to call it a flag for now, even though it's a Koinobori. That's the official name of that. All right, let's go back to our flag. I'm going to uncheck solo. That's why everything just disappeared suddenly. We're going to pull this square out. As we see, it's going to be about where you see it now. It's going to come up a little bit and over about there. Maybe kind of lines up centered on the door frame. That'd be nice. And then we'll pull it in to the wall. And now, how big is this thing? It's just a touch smaller than what you see here. And we'll pull it into the wall a bit more, like that. And let's see here. Let's go into our geometry and see if we can, let's reduce our division X maybe. Yeah, something like that. And then we don't need to change the size. I think we already did that. Okay. That's pretty good. So division X around 7. And we're just doing that so that we get more of a rounded shape to start out with. Something that matches closer to what the original is. We'll just double check inside the shop. Maybe hit our X-ray tool just to make sure that we're not peeking through both sides of the walls, and we definitely are. And then we'll pull that a little bit closer like that to the wall. And then we'll go ahead and validate that. All right, and let's go into our voxel. Let's kick the resolution up to 240, something like that. And then let's use our smoothing tool. So we have that active over here. Let's go into our symmetry. We need XYZ symmetry, local symmetry. We'll go ahead and show the lines so that we can see it easily. Make sure that we don't have anything strange selected, like relax. And all I want to do is soften this up a bit. All right, and let's see here. We could use our move tool and kind of pull in the corners a bit to round those out some more, and then soften it up. Just because the example kind of looks like that. We'll pull outwards and then push inwards at the corner. We're a little too big, so that's not what we're going for. Something more like that. Okay, cool. Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect, but that looks fairly decent. For some reason, my smoothing tool just hasn't been as reliable lately. I think they did an update recently. Okay. Pretty good. Don't want to spend forever on that. Let's add our next item. We just need a cylinder to come out. And let's go ahead and shrink that down to, yeah, that looks pretty good. Well, actually, let's do snapping tool. 45 degrees will be good enough. And then we are going to switch down here to our editing tool and drag this out. And it looks like it comes out about that far, maybe. Yeah, sure. That looks good. And let's kick up our division X just a touch. And we'll validate that. Maybe we can turn on symmetry, XYZ, local, and hit our smoothing tool just a touch on that to get a bit kind of a softer look. That looks good. Actually, what we could do here is clone that, grab our gizmo tool, drag it outwards to where it's about center with the end, and then it's going to be tilted off to the side. But here's what we want to do. When we're working with an angled object like this, as you see it in our background scene here, our example scene, we want to keep this simple while we're doing the design process. So I'm going to stick with right angles. That way I have access to front view, right view, top view, and then I can quickly snap into those views, and I can trust that what I'm doing in those views is safe. Let's go ahead and stretch that out just a touch more. We don't want to do any fancy adjustment and positioning until all of the design process is pretty much done. Then we can go back, change the angle, and move it forward or backward, and tilt it to the right or left. It's just going to make things so much easier in the design process if we don't have to worry about that stuff. Okay, with these done, so these are the flag posts. So I'm going to add a group, and then we'll just call these flag post. Then we're going to go back in and we're going to add a new group, because this group we're going to be focusing on the pinwheel. Let's call this Pinwheel. Pinwheel. I know that has an M. Please don't judge me. I'm just trying to make this go quick. I don't want to spend too much time on nitpicky details. We know what it is. All right. So let's start with a sphere. Let's get that on there. Now, where is that sphere? We'll double tap. Okay. We're over here. Kind of want it over here on the stick, but that's fine. Okay, front view. We'll just make sure that it's centered. Right view. We'll bring it back until it's centered on the post. Okay, now we know it's lined up. Again, that's another reason why we would not want to do too many changes of the angle for this stuff. It looks like the pinwheel center is just about 50% larger than the actual pole. So we're going to shrink that down. So this would be 100%. This would be like, 50% larger, something like that. Let's see here. We want to go into a select mask tool. We're going to go into a line mask. And what we want to do is we just want to split this thing in half. And I'm going to shrink down the back half using our gizmo tool and just the sizing. And then we'll just shrink it down like that. And then we'll have something to mount the ends of the pinwheel to. And it just gives it a little more character. We could turn off our masking now. And then go back into our gizmo. And then mount this maybe a little bit forward like that. We'll adjust the sizing a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Remember, this won't actually function. So if it's clipping through some of the other objects, it's not a big deal. Let's see here. The next thing that we need to do is that actual array of pinwheel wings or whatever coming off the side of that. So let's add. Now, before I had done a tube tool. And if you've seen some of the previous tutorials, when I did the tube tool, turn on snapping so that I can snap this in position. Previously, when I did this tube tool, let's go solo so that we can see just this item. We had worked on a profile for the tube, and we used that so that we could make a shape more like, a custom shape, right? It's one unique benefit of the tube tool is that you can design exactly the kind of shape that you want. And we can come in here like this, and I can drag this outwards, and then trying to zoom out, it's kind of painful, but we're going to do something kind of like this where, yeah, we're going with a shape pretty much like that. Looks about right. Stretches out a little bit more. As you can see, it's pretty low poly. We'll kick up division X. That'll help a lot. Or post subdivision is fine too. Either one of those will give us the amount of detail that we're looking for. And actually, that's pretty good. I'm gonna validate that, and then we just need to make it a bit more narrow. We'll go ahead and we're going to hit our XYZ symmetry, turn on local smoothing, and we'll smooth out the edges so that it's more pinwheely. And that's good to go. Nice and easy. All right. So we need to mount this thing onto the rest of what we're doing. So I haven't moved it yet, and that's because we're going to add this radial array. And the radial array is going to do most of the work for us. So I just need to find where the radial array is. I think we're still centered on it. Okay. And we want this radial array, we want 4. That's fine. And then we'll move this out. For some reason, the symmetry is acting super strange today. Okay, make sure your symmetry is off. Gizmo tool. And then we'll move this out like this. And then we select the radial itself. Now, it stuck the radial way over here. That's not where I want that. Okay. All right, so make sure the radial gets placed in the right place, ends up in the right place. We're gonna be right around here, and then in our right view, we'll move it back to where it's centered where we want. And then our pinwheel wing thing has gone to outer space, but we'll bring it back. Okay. And now you can probably see what this radial tool is supposed to be doing for us. This is doing a radial Y. We might want to do radial Z. Yeah, Z. Radial Z. Okay, so each one of these radials will allow us to create mini copies in a circle. And we can determine very quickly how many of an item in a radial format we want. It's a very useful tool for doing those kinds of shapes and things. We're going to pull this forward. That lines up pretty much perfectly. My only objection to what we're looking at is it's backwards, so we'll go ahead and flip that so that it's in the correct place. And it looks like we need to be a little bit, either we need all of this to be smaller or something, because we're super close to the house, and we were actually clipping through that, and we don't want to clip through the house, or I keep calling it a house, the Yaki Emo shop. Okay, so we want to do something more like that. And let's see here. Let's hit solo. I'm going to use the move tool. We'll make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to turn off symmetry, and then we're just going to pull this in a little bit further. And hopefully that makes it look a little bit better. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Cool. All right. That looks pretty good. Only thing that we need to do now, well, we could tug on this a little bit right here. Give it a little bit more interesting shape. Yeah. Pull that out a little bit. And then we'll tuck the front end just a touch more. And yeah, that looks good. Cool. All right. That one's knocked out. Let's work on the fish, or the Koinobori. So this is actually one of the main focuses of the project. This is really what kicked off the whole idea behind this project, is doing Koinobori for Kodomo-no-Hi. So we need to close this out. We're going to be working in the flag. And we're going to add a new group. I knew I was going to do that. We'll add a new group. We'll rename this. And we're going to call this fish. Okay, we'll keep it simple. Yeah, it's supposed to be Koinobori, but, or Koi, maybe. Fish is fine. We're teaching in English, so we'll go with fish. All right. Very similar to what we've been doing. In order to keep this centered, I'm going to actually add, we're going to use a sphere. That'll be fine for what we're doing. I'm going to add it here on the flag post, but then drag it into the fish, because that way if I add it there, it'll center on the flag post, and then I don't have to go find it somewhere. Okay. Now, we need to make this thing quite big. And it's going to be big enough that it almost covers the door. So here we have the Koinobori, this sphere that's going to represent the shape that will be the Koinobori. We need to make this large enough, and we need to stretch it out as well. Now, there is a couple ways that we could stretch it out. One good way is to use that masking tool. We'll go ahead and validate that. We'll use a select mask. We'll line through the middle. And I believe we could stretch this out like this. Yeah, that looks really good. That's what we want. And we'll go ahead and go back to our mask. We'll clear that mask, and now we have that elongated shape that we're looking for. It's a cool quick trick to make, kind of long elongated shapes. You can do that with tons of different objects. You can do that with the squares and any other object really that you need to stretch out. Sometimes just using the regular tools, the dimension tools, works fine, but with spheres, they're always symmetrical, so you got to do something extra. Okay, so with that done, what we will need to do next is we need to trim off the front of it. But actually, even before we do that, we need to go over to our gizmo tool. What we'll do is we will clone this sphere. We're going to turn on X-ray, and then on the clone, we're going to shrink that down a little bit. And we'll, unfortunately, when we're shrinking it, our origin is set off to the left. So just keep that in mind when you shrink it. It's not going to be shrinking centered like it should be, but we need something about like that. We're just going to hollow out the inside of that shape. So we'll come over here, we'll turn off the eyeball, we select both. So eyeball off on the inner sphere, the outer sphere, we'll keep the eyeball on. We hit Boolean again, and now we have a hollow sphere, pill-shaped sphere that we can trim the front off. So we're going to trim the front off. Again, we'll use this line tool. All we got to do is trim off the front, kind of like that. I think maybe we could go a little bit deeper, like that. That should be good. And now we have the shape that we're looking for. We'll have to adjust this, of course. So we'll open our gizmo tool. We're going to stretch out that shape a bit longer than it was before. We'll pull it forward. And let's see here. Now we need to maybe up the voxel resolution on this. Take it up to 250 plus. We'll turn on our symmetry, XYZ symmetry local. And then I just want to make sure that when I'm on my filtering tool, my smoothing tool, which we're going to use next. Again, symmetry, make sure it's turned on. And make sure that we're set to local, and we are. There's a face group option that sometimes I'll turn on and off, and then the front face vertex only. When we're doing this smoothing, we want access to all sides of this while we're smoothing. That's going to be kind of important. And we'll be able to go in and just by selecting this edge here, we'll be able to smooth this out. And it looks like the other Koinobori was a little bit thicker, but that's fine. It's not a big deal. I'll smooth out some of the rough edges that are on the outside of that since it was a lower res when we first started this, but there we go. That looks pretty good. Again, there's some minor imperfections in the shape of this. What we can do is we can expand our move tool and just kind of like make this look a little not as symmetric. So it kind of looks like, you know, some wind is blowing on it, kind of like that. We could turn off the symmetry so that we can, you know, like raise or plump up one particular side over another, kind of give it some distortion, kind of like that. Just kind of give it some character. It is a windsock, of all things. Okay, and I'm just gonna make sure that the front is pretty even. Okay, cool. Now that we've gotten all this work done, it's time to start working on. Oh, we got to finish the tail. Let's do the tail, and then I was going to go into starting to do some of the detail in the design, but let's do the tail first. Tail's pretty simple. We'll be selected on this sphere so that when we add this next piece, it's pretty quick. We'll click add. We're gonna do another sphere. That'll be fine. It doesn't have to be an amazing shape. And what we're gonna do is we'll come to the side here, this kind of the right view here, and we're gonna shrink this or squeeze this down in that direction. And then we can kind of elongate it in this direction, and then we'll turn it like that. Then what we'll do is we can add, actually, we'll add a mirror. And right now that mirror is on the X plane, and we need to mirror, and then we need to mirror in the Y direction. And then we want to set the mirror in the middle. So we have the mirror highlighted. We're going to bring that mirror centered on the mass of the Koinobori, the fish. And what we'll do, we'll select the sphere, we'll pull it up. Okay, that's what we're looking for. And then we'll rotate it. And that's perfectly fine. That looks good. And the tail of fish meets in the middle. I see here that the tail of the fish is a bit larger than the mass of the actual Koinobori's, like, it's larger than the mass of it up here in the front. So something about like that. And then we'll slide it in about like that. We don't have to worry too much about what's happening on the middle. If we want to get super detailed about it, yeah, you would carve out this extra space in the middle, but nobody's going to see that for what we're modeling. If for some reason you're using this asset, you're following along this video and you want to use this asset maybe in a game or some other project that you're working on, and you think that there might be other view angles on this that would allow somebody to peek down into, you know, down in there, then yeah, you could get rid of that. Let's go ahead and validate that sphere. And what we'll do, we'll validate the mirror, and then I'm going to just join children so that the tail is just one piece. And let's go into solo. Actually, just X-ray, just for fun. We'll trim that extra space off. We'll use this lasso tool, and then all we got to do is trim along this edge here. And all we got to do is be a little bit deeper than the thickness of the fish, the Koinobori. All right. And if we turn off X-ray, none the wiser, nobody knows what's going on. And then if you look down in there, you won't see that mess in there. It'll be fine. Cool. Let's go ahead and bust out our smoothing tool. Because we joined these, they're a single piece now. I'm going to keep them separate from the main portion of the windsock. So this area we're not going to blend. We'll just keep that same separation, but this area right here we're going to blend. Just go in here and do a voxel remesh. All right, so we got our smooth. We'll just come in here and smooth this area out. You could still go in here and add some mass to this. Here in the middle, you could go in with the clay tool and add some mass, just so it's not, because it's supposed to be like a single piece here. And then we can go in with a smooth tool and make it a little bit more flat so that it's one piece. That looks better. That looks more like the original. So we ended up using the clay tool anyway, but that's a lot easier. If you form two seams against each other and you try and use the smoothing tool, sometimes you're going to get not a great, you're not going to get a great effect out of the tool. But I think that is more or less what we're shooting for there. Cool. Let's see here. Next, we can do quick coloring of all of this stuff. So we've put in all this work. It's time to start coloring everything. So we'll start with the flag pole. So we're going to have the box and these two cylinders. If you were following along, at some point you probably made some of these colors. If you hit new while you have a color, it'll add these down here to the bottom. I already kind of know what colors these are, so I'm just going to select the colors that they were. If for some reason you don't have the color, you can eyedrop and select a color from the background picture or from somewhere else in the project. And that's just a really fast way of coloring real fast. The pinwheel is going to be that color, so I'm going to go ahead and hit paint all on that pinwheel, that centerpiece there. Then we have this radial that we're going to paint, and that's that lighter purple color. I've already got that one saved. We'll paint that, and then the Koinobori, the fish itself, needs to be painted. We'll paint that. And then we can start masking this thing off and doing some of these other colors with it. So in the front of this object here, we're going to tap that so that we have this body selected. We'll go into select mask. We're going to do a line. We're going to just cut off the front, kind of like that. And then we're going to invert it. And then we're going to color. And it looks like it's about the same color as the house, which is this lighter wood color. And we'll paint that real quick. All right. Now let's clear. We need to do a rectangle here, kind of in the middle. We'll come back up towards the back just a little bit. We'll select that. We'll invert it. This is going to be that darker purple color. I've got that one already saved. And then we'll go ahead and paint that stripe on there. And then let's clear our mask again. Okay, let's see here. And then we can do these rectangle shapes here in the back. To do that, that's fairly simple. Instead of the lasso line or rectangle tool, we can use this polygon tool. And then we could do local vertical symmetry. I think it's Y symmetry. Yeah, you can already see it is reflecting where we need. And then we can just draw in the line shape that we need. masking that. There. We'll just do it like that. And then this is very similar to that other tool that we were using. The cylinder, I'm sorry, the tube tool. And right now, we're kind of stuck with what the grid is giving us, but that's fine. That looks pretty good. Just like that. And when we mask this off, it should look fine. If we click this green dot, it'll apply that mask. And then what we can do is we can come down here like this. Same thing. We'll apply the mask tool here. It looks like it needs to be roughly the same angle. Maybe more like that. Click the green dot and then it applies the mask again. And unfortunately, it's not masking on the bottom like I hoped. So we'll just do it manually. And then this one down here. Click the green dot. Click the green dot to mask that. And then we'll come down here. That looks pretty good. And then the last one over here. Whoops. Kind of like that right there. And then we're masking again. Cool. All right, so that's masked off. Let's invert it and paint it with that darker purple color. Make sure that that's selected and then paint it. And let's clear. All right, we got that tail pattern done. Looks good. And let's see, the only thing left to do would be to do that eyeball. I think that I'm going to save that for the next video because I kind of want to pause us here because I don't want to get too deep into this. Let's see here. There's something that I'm seeing here. There's some grain, like kind of aliasing, I think is the right word for that. Some stair stepping here in this. What we can do to fix that is we can select that sphere that makes up the large portion of the fish. We can make sure that it's meshed high enough. And then in the smoothing tool, one trick when you want to like kind of smooth out colors like this, we'll turn the size way down on our brush and we're going to turn the intensity down to 0. And I think we could get away with smoothing this line. It's kind of tricky to do. You want to be real careful doing this because it's easy to mess up all your hard work. But something like that. I really should use my views here. A lot of aliasing here on the back that we can get rid of. And then we'll just smooth that out to make sure that that doesn't look too bad. And then same thing here. We've got a lot of aliasing here. So we can just come in here and kind of smooth that line out. That happens sometimes with some of these tools that you're using. They're just too harsh. But again, if you make the line too smooth, then it doesn't look defined enough. So you just got to be careful. Okay. I'm sure if we zoom out a little bit to the view that we're actually going to see this, that'll look pretty good. Tiny bit blurry, but that's fine. Not as crisp of a line as I would hope. Okay. All right, so what we'll do is we'll stop here. I want to save this exactly how it is right now. And then let's kind of see how this fish part is gonna look once we kind of tilt it and move it into place, just for the sake of figuring out how it'll look. We'll select those two pieces, and then we can tilt this. We'll turn off the snapping. We'll tilt this up a bit, and then tilt it forward, kind of like that. And then let's move it kind of more into the position that it would be for the comparison image. Yeah, it's more or less something like that. Yeah, it's gonna look kind of like this position right here. And then it's a bit bigger, seems like. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, about right there. It seems like everything could be enlarged a little bit. Even the pinwheel is kind of small in our version. But yeah, that's definitely a good start to the Koinobori part of this. And so what that leaves us with the last part of our lesson, we'll have this one's part 6. So we'll have a part 7 to wrap up. And in part 7, we'll work on this flower piece, the shape of the scales, this pattern of the scales here. And then we'll maybe add some of the furniture and maybe that wood paneling in the back of the shop. And we'll call it that. We'll call that good. All right, so we'll do a nice kind of last look at what we've done so far. Go ahead and turn on our turntable. I feel like we could definitely benefit from some better lighting in here. We'll add a light, sure. And this will be, we'll just do a point light. It's not quite as nice as I hoped. Something like that. Did it burn out? Okay. So add in a little bit of lighting and make it look cool. And turn up the intensity. Something kind of like that. And let's take a final look. So, hopefully you're enjoying this series so far. We are wrapping up point 6 or part 6 of this series. And what we'll do is we'll start working on all the patterns and all the shapes and all the other stuff that we need to do to add on to the flags and the final details and the final touches and the last part of the series in series part 7. And we'll see how all the final look renders. I might be able to pull it into Blender and see if we can get maybe a little bit better color and stuff out of this for the final render, make it look a little bit nicer. I have a lot less experience in Blender, so it would be probably me making tons of mistakes on camera if you want to follow along for that. And then recently got some multicolor 3D printers in, And I'm actually curious to see what this might look like if we tried to 3D print it. I'm kind of trying to, I'm curious if it would be cool to make a little 3D print, little miniature city out of some of the stuff that we'll make in these tutorial series. I'm kind of going for maybe a Monogatari style theme for some of the 3D designs coming up. But if there's something that you'd like to see, or if there's something that you would like me to try, just feel free to leave a comment. Please, if you enjoy the video, like, subscribe to get updates on new content as it's coming out. And hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for joining us.